and welcome to the fourth day of play here from the Oval, where it's just about all but over. I think if this had been played in June, July or August, we might have got the lights in to finish the match today. It's dark, as you can see. Was it this dark at 6:40 p.m?
No, not at all. It turned very quickly, but then as it turned quickly as it does at this time of year in the UK, Zach Crawley and Alex Lees batted very quickly. I mean, there was, Stuart Broad told us at the end in his press conference that the umpires were communicating all the way through about bad light, and actually said to Lees and Crawley, look, if you want to hurry up, you're more than welcome to hurry up. And both the England batters and the South African fielders were kind of aware of the situation. And 33 runs, yeah. I mean, tomorrow's now free at the Oval as well, so if you've got a ticket, you'll get that refunded. It just continues a summer-long tradition of having the last day for free, and it's the first time we've got into day 4 in this series, for this particular Test match. So now,
the first time
might as well do day 5 as well.
Wow,
yeah.
How are we gonna cope?
I don't know. It was very, very surreal. It was a very long day. A lot happened today.
A lot happened, right?
Yeah.
30 wickets in 2 days is a lot over 2 days.
Yeah.
And I guess it needed to happen at that pace. Probably, maybe not as frenetically from England towards the end, because they've got, day and a half to chase 130. Had South Africa maybe got to 150, 160, pushing towards 200, we might have been looking at a slightly more competitive, slightly trickier chase. I think South Africa's batting doesn't really need much more said about it, apart from the fact that they need to find some batters and they need to find them quickly. I was particularly disappointed in the way they failed to capitalize on their opening stand today. So
Yeah.
Dean Elgar and Sarel Ewe got through some really, really difficult passages of play. And, those 58 runs they put together, none of them looked like they came easily.
But it didn't look like any of them carried much risk. All the runs they scored, I feel like the majority of the boundaries they scored beyond the odd,
the hack over the slips.
Yeah, but even that, if the ball's there, playing it. And, there were a couple of, obviously, like nudges through gully and stuff like that went for 4. But, it took them 8.5 overs to knock off the 40-run lead that England had established, which should have been more from England's perspective. And it really felt like a different game at that point. Especially at lunch when I think South Africa were leading by 40 or 30 or something like that, yeah.
So, things that South Africa need to think about. Keegan Peterson just hasn't looked the part in this series, or he's looked the part for short periods of time, and then something's gone wrong there. We can't be too harsh on Ryan Rickleton and Kaya Zondo. They've just come in for this match. But what about Kyle Verreynne, who seems to be dispensable in some ways, right? They moved him behind Wiaan Mulder in this match.
Yeah, that was strange, wasn't it? And I suppose it's a difficult thing because he's clearly a very accomplished keeper. Absolutely. But then when you bring in a new batter who also keeps in Rickleton, well, really, okay.
I mean, he keeps, but he wouldn't be the first choice.
Sure,
yeah.
Okay, but it does start. You then start
absolutely.
having that conversation, don't you? I talk about that from an English perspective, given that Johnny Bairstow and Josh Pollard weren't the best keepers in in England. That guy's currently keeping now, but when one was in the team, you're like, okay, do you pick the other? And also when one's out of form, you're like, okay, we've already got that guy here.
Exactly.
You can take the gloves, and it just starts those conversations going down a path there, where if you're the man in position and you're struggling, you don't want them to go down. And I suppose there was a moment where, he saw his moment at the end there where he thought, I'm going to tee off here, and he just skied it straight to Jimmy. And it was quite painful to watch, I think. It's been quite a tough tour for Verreynne. But, as I said, kept very well in quite difficult conditions, but you're kind of wondering actually where it's a kind of batting lineup. And I suppose I'm going to use this as an excuse to talk about England. The reason England are batting the way they're batting this summer is because a lot of these batters were part of a specific team that only won one test in 17. And they thought, right, okay, we've tried so many different ways of knuckling down and doing this. Why don't we just try playing positively, attacking in that way? And invariably, some players got a lot out of it. Johnny Bairstow in particular. Yeah. Joe Root certainly at the start of this series. He currently averages 11 in this series, funny enough. At the start of this summer, rather, Joe Root doing well. And it kind of has stumbled upon a situation now where the two openers, who've been pretty dreadful, were able to do what they did tonight. Yeah. And that will go some way. Who knows if it will save them their places outright for Pakistan. I'll probably say it will, but they won't necessarily be nailed on for that first test in Pakistan. But you're in a situation where some people get their joy every now and again from playing this way, whereas it looks like South Africa in a situation where no one's happy.
No, and I think you need two things to kind of create that freedom that you mentioned, with being able to just bat instinctively, proactively, creatively, or in any way that feels true to you. The one is you need the management to say, go ahead and do this. And if it doesn't come off several times, as many times as it didn't come off for someone like a Zach Crawley, that's okay. And then you also need a little bit of self-belief and confidence, which really seems lacking in the South African lineup. There's a lot of tentative play. There are players that are worried about their places. To be honest, I don't even know why, because there are no players waiting to take those places. And I just don't think that they've been able to execute. These are also tough conditions. So their next series is going to be played with the Kookaburra ball on maybe less seamer-friendly pitches down in Australia. I don't know, maybe I'm going to
certainly less seamer-friendly than what they've played on so far.
They're going to be playing against a lot of bounce, different type of ball, and maybe that's an opportunity to put right some of those wrongs. On paper right now, it doesn't look good for me. South Africa going to Australia, having dropped a couple of points, going to drop some points in the World Test Championship, facing a team that's vying for a spot in the final. And I just don't think that South Africa came with enough energy into these last couple of days. Maybe the events of earlier this week have affected them. I don't know that that's an excuse. I also think England have just brought a level of emphatic play that underlines the summer, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the way these 2 days of, the speed at which they've come has been quite, I even think from us watching on the side, it's quite hard to compute.
Yeah.
Even when people were booing at the end for those, the 33 runs or whatever it was that they needed, I was a bit like, have we not had enough? Yeah. We're almost like gorging. It's like death by chocolate. Yeah. It really does feel like and it's been great to watch, but I wonder if South Africa's issue has been that they've just got caught up in it. I know, they didn't want to talk about that word, and we're not going to mention it again, but
do you think anyone's had a tequila, or do you think they're just too upset?
I think they just, maybe after something like today, going into tomorrow. But it really did feel like, having decided not to talk about it and then doing brilliantly at Lords, they just got sucked in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can't put my finger on how or why, but it definitely happened at Old Trafford. And for some reason, maybe it was a big break in between. Maybe they didn't need that between Old Trafford and this.
Maybe.
There's a lot of talk about golf. I don't really know. They've been here a long time. They've played a lot of cricket.
And
I don't think golf.
But probably as much golf as cricket, because we would have had 8 days, 9 days, I guess, give or take.
I think you could say the same thing about the England team as well. Bear in mind that Johnny Bairstow isn't playing here because of golf accidents. But yeah, no, it's been a strange summer in a good way for the Red Bull team, and I was surprised at how, as I said, South Africa got sucked in, and I do wonder where it goes from here, because England are just on a roll in terms of this is the best feeling that a lot of them have ever had. Stuart Broad surpassed Glenn McGrath, who very sweetly said he's nowhere near the kind of bowler that Glenn McGrath
humble brag
is. Yeah. I'm ahead of him, but I'm not as good as him. But older players like like Stuart Broad and James Anderson feel revitalised by this. And there is something to be 100%. And there's something to be said for that in terms of carrying the team forward. Now everyone wants to be a part of it, and it feels like they're in a good spot. I don't know that they're going to have many more. They've only lost one test this summer. They're going to win their 6th test this summer. I don't know if that's a win ratio that's going to stay all the way through. Almost certainly not, but they'll believe it is.
And it's the opposite feeling for South Africa now. And I think one of the things we want to point out is that the next FTP doesn't have them coming to England at all. So we've got potentially 5, 6 more. Some people are talking about long periods of time where South Africa won't tour England. And this was an important place to tour. It was a place where they won quite a few series, 2008, 2012. They drew a couple of series before that. They counted themselves as being successful in this country, at some of these venues, at a place like Lords, for example. And we just don't know if we're going to see that again. We don't know which generation of players will see that again. So they've squandered an opportunity, I guess, to really make it count. They won't be back for some time. It's not sounding like the mood is very good, even though I think they've tried to keep spirits pretty high. And they don't play a lot of Test cricket. So we're kind of reaching a sad stagnation point in South African cricket.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that was a nice way to, I suppose it's tomorrow morning, but that kind of been a nice way to go out. And I wonder if it's enough to not put people off Test cricket in South Africa, but certainly make them lose faith in it.
Absolutely, that would have been my word for it. That I think people are now just looking to the T20 World Cup, looking to the new league that's starting next January, and saying, let's put our focus on the white ball game. It's actually, I guess, what the cricketing world is saying, right? So for once, South Africa can claim to be with the times. How far do we give them tomorrow morning? Half an hour, 45 minutes?
I'd say half an hour. Yeah.
So we're going to see you really early tomorrow morning.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.